This is American Fashion Podcast. I'm Charles Beckwith here with Cathy Schepis.
Hi, and I'm very excited to be here live today.
And we're welcoming to our internet connection here, Millard Drexler, also known as Mickey Drexler, who is the CEO of Alex Mill, which is a fashion brand. Let's see. There we go. Mickey, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thank you, Charles and Cathy.
Hey, Mickey.
How are you?
Doing good today.
Good.
So you've been CEO of the Gap Group and of J. Crew, and you founded Madewell, and you founded Old Navy, and now you're running Alex Mill. Can you tell us just in general a little bit about your journey?
Did you say my journey? Was that it?
Yes. Yeah. Through the whole process.
Okay. It's been a long one. So where do I start? Beginning of life or now or?
Midway.
I guess
Let's do midway.
Career-wise?
Okay.
Okay. I always think it's hard to talk about career without talking about childhood, so I will stay away from that. But I always connect back people to the conditions in which they grew up, their parenting, and so on and so forth. That being said, I grew up in the Bronx. My dad worked in the garment business. My mom was a secretary. And I always worked, probably mostly because I was forced to by my father, who was not an easy father and not easy to live with. But in any case, but I always had jobs, and it was just kind of an automatic thing in my life. By the way, tell me if I'm getting in the weeds a bit too much.
No, you're fine.
Okay. I worked as a kid. I delivered the New York Times at high school. I worked in the basement sorting out towels. And my dad worked in the shipping room of a coat manufacturer. And I did that many Saturdays and school holidays growing up. I guess I had a connection to the garment business in that way. And I worked in some retail stores, retail companies. My first summer job was with A&S, which has not been around for many years, but went to start my career at Bloomingdale's instead of A&S. And that's kind of an important story. I'm not going to get into it too much, but it was just a sense of why Bloomingdale's versus A&S. One reason was A&S offered me a lower salary than my friend who I recommended. And the other was Bloomingdale's, to me, was a much more exciting store with what I thought might have been a better future. I spent 6 years there. The last 2 or 3, and it's been typical of me, I got a little frustrated, a little not bored, and felt I wasn't doing as much as I could do. Went to Macy's only for a year and a half, felt the same way, and then went to Abraham and Strauss for 4 years and felt the same way. But I needed to make a living. I had a family, and so on and so forth. So that takes care of those 12 years out of school. I then got a call to be the CEO of Ann Taylor, which was then a 25-store company, losing a fair amount of money, owned by Miller's, a company you never heard of. But they owned Brooks Brothers, and they owned some other companies. I wasn't going to take the job. Don't ask me why, but it was kind of risky, I thought. And what do I know about running a company? And I realized once I took the job, and the reason I took it is a friend of mine said, take the job. He said, you're much better off running a small company. And he was older, wiser, and very successful. He said, take the job. It was a Sunday night dinner at my apartment with him. And I took the job the next morning. Because, he knew more than I did. And it was a very important thing that I did take the job. I learned how to run a company. And I said, when you learn, you're always learning from someone, et cetera, or you're listening, or you're curious. And there I was, started Monday morning. It was sometime in, I think, June, and ended up running the company. My bosses were all in Washington, D.C., so I never really saw them. And they weren't that interested in the company anyway. I learned from Brooks Brothers that owning your own label is really important, because in the department stores, I was taking markdowns all the time, meeting the competition. And what I learned is if you're going to build a business long term, you must own your product. You must own the imaging of it. You must own the presentation of it, because if you don't own your product, someone else could own it and sell it for less. And in those days, there wasn't the crazy kind of discounting that goes on today. So this was many years ago. Everyone talks about direct to consumer today, but this was, I guess, 1980, because I watched Brooks Brothers and I looked at their margins and their profits, and then they were a really good company. But I watched them take quality out of product to maintain price, which is frankly suicidal. And the history tells you what happened to Brooks Brothers. In any case, I at Ann Taylor switched to I'll say Ann Taylor Studio, and worked with 2 or 3 vendors who did Ann Taylor designs for us, and we worked very closely with them. The bad news is Allied Stores took us over within 6 months of my starting. I was quite depressed because they were the bureaucrats times 10 that I never wanted to deal with. But I stayed for 4 years and did what I had to do. I kept a suit in my closet just in case they called me. And I went along with things that they wanted to do, except and there wasn't a fight because they really didn't care that much. We were a tiny company. They wanted me to put Ann Taylor a unit of Allied Stores. I refused to do it. Now, did I have a fight? No, I just didn't do it. And they never really followed up. But already when you're a unit of Allied Stores, it's a message to the customer that you're not who they think you are, image-wise. The company took off like a rocket. And I stayed 4 years, but I knew I had to get out at some point because I wasn't working for the kind of people I wanted to work with. Long story short, Don Fisher from Gap contacted me, wanted me to open a company in New York, which a brand new company. I had a list of items that I put in the new company, but in those days, you couldn't go around and raise millions of dollars for every startup under the sun like people do today. And I didn't know how to do it anyway. So I got to know Don very well. And then I said, Don, I cannot work with you because I think you're headed south to wherever you go, but you can't support a company that I'm involved with in New York. It was clear. I got to know him really well because I hung out with them and all that. He agreed. And he said, move to California. I said, no way. Long story short, I moved for 3 years and stayed 18 years. First 3 or 4 years, kind of a nightmare for me, personally and professionally. Public company stock dropping. Well, I say the first year and a half, actually, because it takes about a year and a half to get new goods in a new concept. We redid 400 stores, and Don was very supportive, and he was a really terrific real estate guy. And we redid 400 plus stores, brand new goods in every store. To get there, I took huge markdowns, which you have to do. And that made him a little nervous, saying, what's going to happen to our earnings? I said, they're going to go down big time, which they did. Stock dropped in half. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what is going on here? Why did I do this? I could be back in New York, so on and so forth. But, we got through it. And in a year and a half, in August, I'll never forget, the company took off like crazy. It just, all of a sudden, the comps, the business, and it was an extraordinary run until 1987. Stock dropped. If you remember, 87 was the crash, went from 78 to 18. And I was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal. And all I could say was, because I read the article, a number of years after, is long term, if you fix it, it's good. And we're in the midst of a storm. And we got through it. We got through it well. I think we were among the top stocks on the New York Stock Exchange for 10 years, which I never really paid much attention to. In fact, when you're going through this, the interesting thing is you're not having a great time sometimes because you're so busy worrying or being busy about continuing to build the business. But I had a great run there. I joined the Apple board in 1999 and stayed for 16 years there with Steve Jobs. And so that was another incredible experience I had. And Steve and I was assigned, I guess, to be the retail maven at Apple company. And watching Steve work was a unique, incredible experience. But there's things that when you're a CEO and you have your life invested in it, it's not all fun for anyone because you're a lot, maybe it's self-imposed pressure. And I always felt no matter what the pressure, no matter what I did job-wise, I felt that. Don fired me in 2001 and asked me to leave the company that day. And I thought maybe stealing, I don't know what I thought I was doing. I said, I can't believe this. Anyway, Steve Jobs warned me. I know we had a bad quarter, a bad year. And I thought he'd be more long-term than that. And then the next day, and I am very good friends with Don's three sons today. I clearly wasn't happy. He told me he made a mistake. And he shouldn't have fired me, but he would like to back me up in a new company. Obviously, I didn't do that. And I left. I stayed through mid-September. We turned it around, totally turned the company around. And I was pleased about that. Anyway, 4 months later, I bought 10% of J. Crew because I knew the private equity firm TPG and Jim Coulter, and they were losing money for 7 years. And I joined them, and they were pretty much near bankruptcy, although they did it 20 years later, they went bankrupt. So they were pretty much near bankruptcy. And did whatever I had to do to get that business moving, new people, new hire, a new point of view, get out of the four-walled office, get into the middle of the floor, have a loudspeaker system. And so I worked there. When I went there, by the way, Old Navy, I started at Gap. And I was there and I started that. I don't want to take up too much time. It was Target was doing a business, a cheaper, they said in the papers, it was a cheaper version of Gap. I flew to, next week, I flew to Mall of America. I looked at their version, it was called Everyday Hero. And I said, this is not a good, cheap version of Gap. But, I'm curious and I want to know, there's a reason they did this. And I found out the reason. And I was out of the store in 3 minutes. And then I confirmed it with our stores in Chicago that everyone can't afford the Gap. 80% of the jeans business in America was $30 or less, and Gap started at $34.50. I gave 10 people $200 each, which is maybe $300 or $400 today. I said, go to the discount stores. I assigned stores to the 10. I assigned categories. And come back and tell me what you think. Because at the end of the day, it's what the customer thinks, not necessarily what I think, but I had a sense of it. They came back and confirmed what I wanted to hear, everything I wanted to hear. Good value is important. Doesn't matter if it ends in 88 cents or 99 cents, a clean store, good service and nice goods and good value. Decided to do it. Don was always very open as a chairman to trying things. Although he gave me a hard time right the week before we opened, but it was, that's what you go through. The margins were too low, et cetera, et cetera. In Paris, we didn't have a name. Passed a bar in Paris called Old Navy, which closed 2 years ago. Wrote the name down, and next day I wanted to see if it was ours to use in America. It was. My board didn't like the name. And it's like saying to me, I don't like the name of your child. And I said, it's a great name and it's free. But I went to two naming companies, Name Lab and Landor. $1 million later, we Old Navy had to be. The first store opened up as I think it was Gap Old Navy, and I said there will be no Gap in 5 years if we use it anyway. Second store went, and the rest is, I think it's about 8 or 9 billion today, and most of the profits of Gap, I'm not sure, but it was a great company, it was like a rocket ship. So and then I left, and then right after I left, I saw a name, David, my friend from Gap days. He was a consultant. Showed me a name, Madewell. He says, "You want to buy this name?" I said, "What about you?" He said, "Well, I'm not right now. I really can't." So I said, "Yes." So I bought the name for $125,000 because it's hard to find a great name. And I know from my days at Old Navy or wherever, I just love to own a name like that because it conjures up an image and a point of view. And I bought the name, and we went public at J. Crew, I think in 3 or 4 years, and then we decided to do Madewell. Struggled for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Samsak, who works here with me, came in and became the chief designer and creative person. Business turned around dramatically. Took obviously a year or two again, and it was another business that took off like crazy. We had some issues clearly at the end with J. Crew, and I think I just did my 40 years in 10 seconds. Okay, I tried to be quick.
Thank you. That actually is a very good roundup. So now you've started a company with your son called Alex Mill.
He started it.
He started it. Okay.
He started it 7 or 8 years ago. But I just wanted to say
when did you come in?
I came in. Samsak quit at J. Crew about 2.5, 3 years ago, I'm guessing. He just quit, walked away. He had a non-compete. He had I said, "Samsak, how could you do this?" I became his agent for part-time jobs and whatever else. I wasn't really doing much. I was involved in some investments. And when he became available, the day his non-compete was up, I fixed him up with Alex. And I also said in the back of my mind, I think I'm going to have a job again. So I fixed him up with Alex. They got along well. And the work began that day to change the company. It was men's only. It was online. It was shirts only. And it was, again, double markup goods. And it wasn't really going anyplace. And Alex knew that. And I was very excited because for 2 reasons. One, I was going to be busy again. And number 2, it kind of fit the vision that I felt for a business. Of course, actually, it was not smaller than Old Navy or Madewell, but we didn't have the bank of Old Navy or Madewell. You know, it was my bank and Alex's bank instead of the big banks. But anyway, we started day one, changing, fixing, doing, redesigning, upgrading, and all the things that go along with what I think one does when they want to they have a vision for a business, they want to get involved. Well, it's just all the stuff we do. Every day you get rid of the bad goods, you start designing the right goods, and you have to have a vision. Always, in my experience, you always have to have the vision of where it is down the road and stick with the vision and keep moving along based on the messages you get from the customers, from your own intuition, and so on and so forth. So we added women's immediately. We were just men's. And the work was, you look back, there was a lot of work to be done from scratch. And that's what I've been doing now for, I think, almost 3 years. And we have a team that works hard. They get it done. And there's only 20 of us here in the office. And it's kind of fun. for me, and I'm enjoying it. And I think we're all having a pretty good time. I got accused of being difficult, but I'm always difficult, and I'm a pain in the ass, as one of the associates said to me the other day. And then we put in the copy of our item. Our pain in the ass, Mickey, wanted us to do cashmere socks. I said, that's cool. Leave it online. That's true.
So, Mickey, recently the Wall Street Journal was saying that you were having a lot of fun working with Alex Mill, and that part of the reason was because it was still small and you can really focus on the product. And then I guess there was an interview with Somsack, and he said, talked about how much you are his mentor and that he always hears your voice in his head saying, did you edit enough? Did you edit enough?
Yeah.
And that's something that he really appreciates is a collection in a store or a brand with a point of view and well edited. So that's where you are now. And I think that that's brilliant. And the store is very focused and really has an amazing point of view in a good environment. But how now will you keep it that way? And is it possible to keep it narrow and scale?
Well, it's a really good question because I think the natural tendency for most merchandisers is not to keep things narrow. But see, right here, I could see the whole team. So I'm going to holler out and say, keep it narrow. And it's really important. And how discipline and knowing, for example, that it's very hard, by the way, because you fall in love with goods. And I have no choice. And I'm even going to reinforce what you just said on narrow. But we're going to have some fun with certain categories, like coffee cake. But that's like the best coffee cake in America. But that's a whole other story for the holidays period, because I can't help myself when I see something that's very exciting. And I tasted the best coffee cake in America. Not that I'm an expert on coffee cake, but we'll do that for holiday in our stores, and then it'll be over with. It's from St. Louis, Missouri, and so on and so forth. But it's really hard to do that because if you feel the excitement of merchandise, you have to be very disciplined. And for example, we have too many sweaters in right now. We have our 5 hero sweaters, and then we have maybe 7 or 8 extra ones that we don't need. And I think it's natural for most merchandisers to be too much or a little much over-sorted. It's a disease that goes with the territory, and we have to be better at it. In fact, the stores all told us today at a meeting, we have too many pants, and they're right about it, or too many sweaters. They're right about it. So just kind of pay attention and be very, very disciplined. And, when you're investing your own money, it helps you be more disciplined than Harry's money or whatever. And it does help, because we write the checks every month. I've never been in that position. I've always owned, I bought 10% of J. Crew, but we don't have any outside investors. So we want to make sure that what we do is right and profitable.
So I was in your Alex Mill store down in Soho yesterday. I'm wearing your dockside polo in navy merino cotton. I also admired the Donegal sweater, which looked fantastic.
The Donegals they're flying out right now.
Yeah, I think I have a slide of those. I'll pull up. So
yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
they're really been amazing.
Great
and
image.
Surprisingly enough, our cardigans are better than the crew neck, which kind of fooled all of us. But that's the business. You get fooled all the time.
How would you define this particular brand in where it sits in the marketplace and who you think are its customers?
Well, it's a good question because we're trying to figure out where it sits in the marketplace now, actually only because we're thinking of charging for returns. And I think every company is going through that today. And we're looking at where it fits. And it's actually, it's hard to know where it fits, but I can say what I like to think. It fits in the marketplace with, and it's always kind of been what we do, really nice goods, good style, good quality, and good value with that edge that makes things a little special. I'm not sure the marketplace today, I'm looking at prices out there. I'm stunned at some of the prices I see, beyond stunned. And I know this year is a big challenge because the freight costs are crazy, deliveries are horrible, so on and so forth. But I think it sits out there with people who find style and taste really important and don't want to spend $1,000 for something or $400 for something that's worth $125. You know, someone was telling me, well, so-and-so shortens the pants for free. And I said, tell me how much the chino was at so-and-so, knowing the answer, $300. I said, well, they can afford with that margin to shorten the pants. But how many people want to spend $300 on a chino? So I think we sit out there in an area that not a lot of people, I shouldn't say that because I always think anyone with a sewing machine is a competitor, but where not a lot of people are so particular about the taste, style, and quality. And that's what we do, especially with 20 of us here. I can walk around, which I do, and be a pain in the ass on everything, and which I am too. We just redid an email. It was about something that is supposed to go out tomorrow morning. And I said, look, that's email's not good enough. And I told them why. And but they all understand, I think, that when I become a little whatever, but we go out there and there's also something about the style and emotion of a business. And we're working on that because someone asked me, have some people working on some stuff creatively. I said, it's not a matter of sell more of this sweater. It's a matter of creating an emotion culturally for a brand. And it's not easy to do. But it happens when you connect the brand well and when the team is personal about it. And when Alex and Samsak are writing the notes or calling the customers, or the person that calls the customers right here, and I'll say to Bridget, what did they say? Because I'm sitting right there. And it's really very helpful. And I think small is the new big in a sense. And I enjoy knowing instantly what information is coming through to the company. And that's a lot of fun for me.
So there's something I see that you're doing, and basically I'm going to make a statement and then it's also a question. And you said that you all are having a lot of fun, and I think
not all the time, by the way.
Okay, but for the most part, having some fun is good. I don't know if you're still on your bicycle riding around.
No more.
You know, when you are looking at your social media and Instagram and your website, there is so much ability for engagement. And what you're building, I think, as everybody is talking about defining the customer experience, I think a lot of that is what is the experience that will really build loyalty that is not transactional. And you're highlighting interesting people, you know, people that are famous, people that are fabulous. Samsak is doing illustrations. You've got collaborations on there. I mean, what I see you building is powerful. So my question is, how is that working? And how do you start to integrate that into brick and mortar?
Well, it's a really good question where just this week, I'm starting with the team to get more involved because I'm not happy. I'm risking things, but they know I'm not overly happy with our emails. I think, and I'm looking at Rose. Rose, you listening here? I'm looking at Rose who does Instagram. And I think that where, we want it to be as personal as it can be. And we want it to be just there for people to understand who we are, what we are, and so on and so forth. And I encourage always personal communications with customers, always, my whole career. And it's not beneath anyone to call a customer. Now, that being said, I think bricks and mortar, they're both necessary for a business. And if you look at our store downtown, we got our butt kicked in the last year, as everyone did. But it's an interesting store. We have a woman, I think I'm blanking on her name, who does all the interior of the store. Mary. We have this group of freelancers, frankly, from my old company or from people Alex, people who Alex knows, Mary, who does all those interior pictures, designs, and so on and so forth. I said to the team today, there's only one way to build a company, and it's being creative. Creative adds huge value to every company. And a lot of people don't understand that. So every day we move forward, like the emails we said, we just killed the email. We usually wouldn't have done that. It's got to be better. But creativity and newness and taking the risks, I think, build the emotion. So everything we do is about that to a degree. And in the store, it will be the same thing. We're interviewing managers right now, and we'll be involved in that. I think it's about merchandising. And if I hear the word experiential, did you use that word?
It's what I was pointing to. Yes, the customer experience.
Yeah. Give them goods that are right first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the experience is if you can have a great meal in a restaurant, that's the most important experience when you go to a restaurant, and be treated well. So there's so many words now. What's the word? The algorithm word. I don't know what it is. And I'm trying to figure it out because I think I did it when I was 23 years old, forecasting goods. But there's lemmings in the business. So I love to actually debate people. How many people are buying this, that, or the other thing? But if you put your heart and soul into a restaurant, into a retail business, into a fashion company, I think people are going to feel that. And when they feel it, that's the experiential in a way, because that gives you a sense of, I got a call back. I called this huge bureaucracy the other day, American Express. In fact, I have a good friend who's the CEO, who's on the board. I didn't do any connection. I called because I had a problem with a charge. This woman, Linda was her name, and actually she was from the Bronx also, which is very funny. We're schmoozing. I said, "Where are you, by the way, now?" And then, "Where are you from?" I always like to know that for some reason. And we're schmoozing. She fixed the problem quickly, and it made American Express a personal company that I would do business with. And I got the same. I sent a complaint. I always love to send complaint letters. I was in London last week. I sent a complaint letter to the hotel. Next day, I get an email back. I was more impressed that I got the email back than the complaints I made. And I told him, I said, "Thank you for getting back to me." And that's all part of an experience. I think it's as strong as whatever. I don't even know what experiential means in retail.
Well, I also love in a few stores. There was one downtown that I went into, but also the Real. Sometimes they'll have a florist in the store. And I think that's kind of fabulous. So you're there buying the product, but on the way out, you could experience, something else. So that to me starts to feel like, that makes me want to go back.
Yeah. By the way, I love that. The florist thing. We were rejected but that's great.
Oh, sorry.
No, I like, it wasn't the same florist, but no, there are things that.
After this interview, a lot of florists will be reaching out to you.
I mean, definitely not. I don't want to say it's not experiential, but I called yesterday with Samsack, a Chicago vintage store, who the fix-up person who worked with both of us for years at J. Crew said he's incredibly talented. And he was. So we called him yesterday and we said, "We'd like to do a little shop of your vintage in our store." Because we saw on, through Zoom, all this stuff, plus through photographs. Now, so that's experiential in that regard. So I don't want to say it's not, and I don't want to say, but there's too much commodity experientials going on out there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's got to be this touch of newness, of excitement, and of instinct and of emotion. So that's really important. I'm trying to think stores that do that and do it well. My friend Gary Friedman at Restoration has done a beyond brilliant job at that over the last, I knew Gary as a store manager, and I'm stunned at his success, but it's amazing. So he
Amazing.
knows how to do that, and he does it really well. But it's out there. I don't want to say it's not out there and not important.
It is amazing, though, because you can go to restoration and have a glass of wine and sit on a couch.
Yep.
And in the meanwhile, you're like, okay, I can put this really big couch in my house.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to make sure everybody who's listening live, since this is a live show that some people will hear later on the podcast, if you have any questions for Mickey, please do send them through the chat. I think we can see the questions from YouTube here, but Rob Sanchez is producing in the back end and will send us the ones from LinkedIn Live as well. And I think our Facebook stream didn't actually function. It has stopped. So hopefully people found the YouTube and LinkedIn links instead and jumped over. Mickey, you were on the Apple board and you were the retail maven there. What do you think that Steve Jobs learned from you?
I idolize Steve, by the way. I miss him every day. He was an extraordinary human being. And what he learned from me is things he didn't learn from me. The one thing he didn't learn is to say hello to people in the elevator. Because I once said to Steve, I said, Steve, you're Steve Jobs, and these people look at you as you are. You should say hello. He got mad at me in his own way. It's okay. That was Steve. What he learned, I think, the retail, I redid I designed the store with Steve. He had a really awful store, and I worked on product color-wise initially. I'm not a technology person whatsoever, but I think the big teaching was getting into the retail business, which, he's an interesting guy in that I kept saying no for a year on joining his board, and Steve probably is the most seductive human being in the world. He never gave up. He had me sign autographs for his kids, which I laughed about because that was kind of ridiculous, Steve. Don't do that. But in a year, he said, I'll join the Gap board if you join my board. And he nailed it. He nailed it because the Gap board needed Steve. Needed him. Why? Because he was my director now, and he's a pain in the ass, and he would say anything he wanted to do, and he had no fear out front for anyone. I think that's what I taught him. The other thing I think, but I don't know if he ever listened, was there's some common sense issues about some board people and so on and so forth. But he's always was very kind about me. But I don't know after that what I did much for Steve, except for the retail thing. And what he did for me is taught me that, I was running a business taking risks. So he just reinforced the risk taking that I had in my own experience. And I watched him. And the sad thing is, which makes me teary, is he was sick, very sick for 5 or 6 years. And he did extraordinary things. He refused to have surgery. And it was very sad to watch in a way because he wasn't going to be with us forever. And at one point, we got a notice of 3 days, and that was that. And he lived a few years longer, did the iPad, and never stopped. And at the end, he got very sick, needless to say. And so I always think about him. And Johnny Ives was his partner, and it was a relationship with creative, and business. Because Steve was a great business person and a great creative person who supported the other creators. So he and Johnny had lunch every day. And that was the company in a way. I don't want to take anything away from the rest of the corporation, but that was the magic sauce there. And Johnny himself was fantastic, and Steve was. And so, it was quite an experience.
Walking into your Alex Mill store in Soho yesterday, it felt a bit like I was walking into a planogram because everything was so neat and orderly, and there were nice little pops of color, which is very similar to the experience of walking into an Apple store just as they're opening in the morning, where everything is just very clean and neatly laid out, but it's also got this little bit of excitement here and a bit of excitement there, and little kind of pops of joy as you walk through the space. I thought that was interesting that there was kind of an alignment between what the Apple Store has become and what kind of defines it and what your store is. I don't think I have a question for that. I just thought it was interesting. Do you
I have a
think,
question from the audience. Oops. Okay.
we'll get to those in a second. But what do you think about, as you were saying, you were looking for lower priced jeans to compete with lower priced brands and stores. What do you think about the race to the bottom with fast fashion, and when is enough enough?
Well, I'm not an expert on that. I think disposability of clothes is not a great characteristic in today's America or anywhere. I was never, to me, it's not what I connect to emotionally or from an instinctive point of view. I think I don't want to get into trouble here, but taste is not the long thing in America to a degree. Taste and integrity in clothing. Lots of people will buy things that will disappear. Now, I think, when people talk, I'm not sure I know, there are a million definitions of sustainability, this, that, and the other thing. I think the longer you keep your clothes is the best way to be sustainable. It never comes up. For me, whatever we make here, will that be in my closet in 5 years or 7 years, or will it fall apart? My closets are teeming with clothes I never wear. I'm never sure what to do with them. But what do I think? I'm not sure. People say it's not so important. Well, Zara ain't slowing down, I don't think. But to me, we reuse most of our piece goods. We have this collection called Rework. And I think there's a way to recycle clothes that, in fact, when you see our jeans collection, coming out this spring, it's all going to be recycled clothes. So what do I think? I have, either you are or you aren't of integrity regarding sustastainability.
Well,
And
what does that mean? They're going to be recycled clothes?
For us,
are you
all the
taking them
fabrics.
apart and rebuilding them?
No,
you're
we
using
take
fabric from previous clothing?
all the fabrics we have get used again in another format. So, for example, right now, we have certain goods that we have a long sleeve shirt. It's whatever. It has a heart on it. I'm not, I have to, and unfortunately, I say we bought too much. So we're going to make it, we're taking the fabric and we either make it into a short sleeve shirt or we make it into pajamas. We have a really cool pajama collection coming out, but we take all our leftover piece goods and we reuse them. We don't throw them out. We don't burn them. We don't do anything with them. And actually, it's among the most exciting goods we do is reuse, and it's called Redone. And we dye them up sometimes, new dyeing. But that's the way we do it. So I don't really connect to the fast fashion. I never did, by the way, even as a child. Not that there was fast fashion. I like things that, if it's high quality and you amortize it, it's actually much less expensive than fast fashion. But there's people who like it, and you can't argue with it. That's what they want to do.
Yeah,
So
and often the argument that comes back is, well, people can't afford this. And my argument always back is, well, they can't afford to not make the investment. There's a quote from a movie, I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was, poor people can't afford a good deal because it's always a trap.
Yeah, yeah. Personally, I feel that way, but you know, but there are good cheap things around, I guess. But that's what I think about it. I think it is what it is, and it'll always be trillions of people who buy cheap clothes, and it's fine. I mean, it's not illegal. They can do it, you know.
So the overdyeing piece is interesting, and is that something you feel you can adopt as like a permanent part of the business from
100%.
a cost perspective?
Yeah,
That's great.
100%.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, we sell out of I always forget what's the name of the blue? Yeah, the indigo. The indigo. We do indigo regularly. We're adding more colors, and it's from piece goods we own that are extra piece goods. And yeah, that's what we do. In fact, we did talk about pricing. We're finding out that the ceiling for us on special goods is not there because we kind of test it. We pole vault in a sense on merchandise to see what's affordable or not. And we have things that are, I mean, it's not a lot for a fancy company, $400 items plus, and they went from 3 to 4. We're not taking risks that are crazy at all. We just brought in cashmere socks, basically because to me it's a necessary luxury, is a cashmere sock, and that's where my team called me a pain in the ass because I said I want cashmere socks here. I wear them every day, always. And they're $65 a pair, and don't wash them a lot because cashmere socks don't last that long. But it's kind of a necessary luxury. Once you go cashmere, it's hard to go back.
Exactly.
So
I'm going to pull up one of the questions from the audience here. I think this is from Kim Friday.
Yes.
The question is not popping up on the screen, so I'll just read it. Quite a
mine
few
popped up a little. I think it
Oh,
popped up and then
did
it depopped.
Okay.
Quite a few. Is that what it says?
Yes. Can you see it?
Yep.
Now I see it.
Okay. It's not showing up on my screen. Cathy, can you read it?
Yes. Quite a few big brands are playing the nostalgia card, bringing back the heritage and in some cases, styles that made them a hit in the first place. What do you think about this strategy?
Tim, I'd have to kind of know what the brands are. If it's authentic, maybe I don't have to know the brands, but it depends. People feel authenticity. There are some wonderful brands out there in terms of heritage, but what do I think of it as a strategy? I'd have to see the brands. I have to see the goods. There's some great brands to me out there that are turnarounds, that have wonderful heritage. And if someone knows how to play that, I think they do well. Brooks Brothers was a great brand. I don't know what'll happen to it.
It's how you bring it back and how you market it. It's everything. Yeah.
Well, it's the integrity of the merchandise. And
Right.
if it's at all gimmicky, it's not going to work. If it's with someone behind that company who lives and breathes it every day and cares every day about quality and what you do, those are the people that will win. It's not a matter of, I'm going to do more business. I'm going to make more money because I'm doing this, that, or the other thing. So I don't know if Tim would tell me the brand. Well, he probably has.
There's Kim Friday.
Oh, it's Kim.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Kim.
But there was a reply to Kim from Vince Gonzalez here saying, I built Ben Sherman in the early 2000s with the heritage strategy. Soon others followed. I believe that vintage is the new angle as real heritage proves authenticity and it's sustainable. That makes a lot of sense.
So Kim rebuilt it?
No, this is Vince Gonzalez replying to Kim.
Oh, I see. Well, Ben Sherman, as I remember, was totally cool. Really cool. I think they had a store in Soho I don't know if it was Prince or wherever, or Spring, I think. But now so to me, what I remember of it, that's a great brand for heritage. Even the name is fantastic. and I love good names. So Vince did that. All right,
Yeah.
Vince.
All right. Also from the audience, Joe Murphy, who I know is a lawyer, he asks, what is the role of patent, design, and utility in the fashion space and wearable technology?
Patent design. I'm not sure.
What is the role of patents in the fashion space
Oh.
and wearable technology?
I don't know if the role of patents meaning owning something like a
Yeah,
name or
I guess no, owning the design of something, the technological design of
oh,
something.
I don't. It doesn't play a big role in fashion at all.
And do you think it should?
Oh man, it'd be so hard. The lawyers will get very rich if it did. But you know, frankly, I really don't know a lot about it. But I think anytime people copy, you mean if they copy patents, whatever, it plays a very small role if I'm understanding the question, because everyone is knocking off everyone today. If I
Yes, they
understand the
are.
question.
Oh,
in wearable technology, I'm not even sure what that is. It sounds a little above my pay grade because I'm not a technology person. So,
well, all fashion is technology. I mean, it's arguably the oldest human technology. Textiles, weaving, that was what we did first as a species. We made clothing pretty early before we had jobs. We were making clothing.
Interesting.
Yeah. Do you think most people invested in fashion businesses actually like fashion?
Most people who invest in it, I don't think, no, not at all.
Okay.
They're investing in anything they think will make them money in most cases. You know, I'm an emotional investor more so, which is not the best way to invest because I tend to not do so well if it's emotional. But no, I think people who invest in fashion, in most cases, the best investors are hopefully investing in people or are too impatient to wait for their returns.
Based on that, I have a big question. So coming through, and we're still kind of in the pandemic, and there have been a lot of changes to our lives, to the environment, and certainly to business. And if there's ever going to be a change in how retail and wholesale go to business, it's kind of now or never in terms of calendars, inventory, timing, etc. What kind of changes are you making to the norm? And then what do you think, in your opinion, what should the industry be changing?
Well, the changes what we're making to the norm. I'm going to give you a very simple answer. Every style, everything we make has to meet our standards of quality, style, value, etc. So is that a big change? No. On the other hand, when I look at the pricing today, I'm astounded at what you pay for from many, many stylish, good quality, nice merchandise vendors. So I think that's incredible. Say that again. What changes?
Well, I think I was inspired by the investor question because
Yeah.
not understanding apparel sometimes is not being patient in terms of our extended calendar, or
Right.
that, designers are under so much pressure for 4 seasons a year. Should that change, basically?
It won't change as long as money is behind anything in which there are a few long-term investors who long-term, I mean, meaning really long-term, and they're usually families more than anyone, from what I know. I'm not an expert here, but I met a lot of private equity people. I've worked with a lot of them. It's what are your returns every year as they give money back to their investors? And I think a family investing long term is not short term. And those, to me, if you're going to find an investor, I think those are the best kind. Whether they understand apparel or not, is usually they will not understand apparel. It's a up and down kind of business, but in the long term, you could win quite importantly in the apparel world. For me, right now, the thing I like most is not having investors. Now, on the other hand, at some point we might need them, but I'd much rather invest in ourselves with the understanding long term of what this company should become. But if I were looking for an investor, I would look very carefully that they meet the standards of not understanding fashion, but understanding the leadership long term and having a strong stomach.
If you were advising emerging designers now on growth, what's your biggest piece of advice for somebody who's kind of starting from the beginning and looking at how to grow in the market today?
Well, I personally, this is designers, and no offense, because they are a must part. A creative director, in my opinion, is a must part of any successful company. My own experience is that they must have a great partner who has great vision in merchandising and in marketing. Because a designer on their own loves to design. And they're not, I say for the most part, they're not business people. And I'm not saying that negatively. My experiences over my career with designers, or just frankly, people who had great tastes and weren't designers, was that they needed a partner to run the company. So, with Samsak here and Alex, my son here, we're partners. The three of us are partners, very close partners. I need him, they need me, and that's the way it works. At Gap, it was the same way, and all the companies I've been with, it's a mutual need, and then you got to get along with them, and you have to see eye to eye long term.
So there's a designer and a merchant. That's basically the two roles.
I think so, because it's kind of like someone who invents the goods and then someone who invests in the goods. And you've got to have a merchant with a really good eye. And of course, let's assume the designer has to have a good eye and a good point of view. And it's not that common to see that around anymore. I think there's a lot of really talented designers who aren't being fixed up necessarily with the right merchants, or they don't recognize the right merchant. And finding good merchants is not easy in today's marketplace at all.
And merchants kind of need to be right brain, left brain.
I agree.
How are they really embracing the creative end of it, and then how can they work with that creative person to make it more commercial?
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
You have an incredible reputation for being a great merchant. And I think it is not easily defined. And one of the main roles of a merchant is to balance out, real-time data with past data and intuition, real gut. Like, what is your advice? What do you think contributed to you honing the skills that you have?
Well, I think a lot of us are born with certain skills. And I was always good in arithmetic. I went to Bronx Science. I had no idea what they were talking about when it came to science. So I don't know how I got through, learning about chemistry and this, that, and I didn't even like my chemistry teacher. She didn't like me, so it was never an easy relationship. But I loved my math teacher. Mm-hmm. And when I started at Bloomingdale's, it kind of came natural in a funny way. I was 23 years old or 22, and I made a huge buy, the biggest in the company unit-wise. And I figured out, no one was teaching me how to do this, because most people are afraid of people who buy too much or take a position. I think I'm a big believer. I met a woman last night, and she's in the art business, works for a friend of mine in a gallery. And I start tracking people and their lives. When I interview, I always do that. And I always find a sense of DNA somewhere out there in terms of what people do really well. So for me, I was 22. It just, I don't want to say it came naturally, but for example, if I was buying, I'll never forget, I was buying a T-shirt collection, huge amount. And I found out, I looked, I didn't, what sold in February, because we tested it. How many would you sell that in June? So I figured out February relation to June. I don't want to bore you with all these details, but to me, that was what's the word we use? That was the algorithm. And a lot of it's a guessing game. A lot of it's investing in anything, downside, upside margins. But that always came natural to me, but you make huge mistakes anyway. So, I've had years where I wanted to shoot myself for being stupid about things. But that's the business we're in.
Right.
And, but I think a lot of it came naturally. And I don't know, the taste thing, the instinct thing, I can't say many good things about my dad, but he dressed very well. So, and I don't know if that was him
I think it's an
dressing.
influence. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It was not a good relationship. And it also actually pushed me to be more successful than him. It might have been a low bar, but he wasn't someone who was supportive or that nice. And that's also influential in how people do things and what their drive is and so on and so forth. So, but I think the math, I think the math thing was kind of intuitive. Not that I knew calculus, but I knew retail math. I understood it well. And my stomach spoke to me about a good item. And so even today, I get very excited when I see a good item. It never changes. I mean, I hope it never changes. But,
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but,
I want to go to our last viewer question from Asante Austin, wondering how Alex Mill is supporting our American manufacturing sector. Are you doing Made in USA for Alex Mill?
We do in LA. We do some manufacturing. We do all I think our redone, et cetera, is all done in America, but mostly overseas. And it's a subject that's very sensitive about the skill sets and the pricing of goods in America. It's just not pricing, by the way, versus overseas. And I'm probably not going to answer that unless someone understands. It's not a simple answer.
Okay. Do you think we could, have we lost skills? Is that what's happening? Or did people age out of being able to manufacture, and then younger people didn't get the jobs because they'd gone overseas? What's your picture of how this happened?
Well, I want to answer this with great diplomacy.
Of course.
And that's going to be tough because I'm not sure who's answering the question, but if you speak to people in our industry, you will know that a lot of things, we try to do in America what we can. Okay, I'll say it that way. A lot of categories of fabrics cannot be done here, and that's why most people go overseas.
You mean for cut and sew, or to actually manufacture the textiles?
Manufacturing textiles, not just cut and sew. You can look at that's kind of it on that one. Okay.
Okay. All right.
It's hard. You have to really be very knowledgeable about the marketplace to answer that question.
All right. Mickey, do you have any parting thoughts here as we wrap up?
Well, I don't know. I would. I think, I'll give you some to people out there. And thank you all for showing up today. I think I always say this: if you're thinking it, it is. I spent a lot of time in my career, early days, thinking it, and I wasn't confident enough to say it is. But I always say, I spoke to the high school group at Bronx Science very recently, and I said, I'm not sure they understood what I was saying, but my whole life I remember thinking certain things about people. And I would say, well, they have a big title. Well, they have this, they have that, so they must be what I don't think they are. And then eventually I found out that they are what I think they are. And it's very hard. I've always had a very hard time finding a great teacher if I needed a teacher. I guess people call me a teacher today. You know, I'm learning every day. Curiosity, hugely important, hugely important. And knowing what you don't know, hugely important. And having great partners. And you interview everyone and you feel it. Resumes don't mean much to me, et cetera, unless it's a way out left field resume. I don't care where people went to college, maybe because of my own personal experience. And I care, I'm not sure what the resume means unless I find out they worked, they had a point of view, and they didn't necessarily have a privileged, nothing wrong with it. I mean, I've had privileged kids, I guess, but as long as they did things that aren't just the entitlement of a privileged person. I grew up in the Bronx in a mixed neighborhood, and that never leaves you, never left me. So I'm always for the underdog.
Mickey, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you. Nice to see you all and appreciate it.
This was
Take
great.
care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.